This is The Meaningful Way. I'm your host, Luke Iorio. The latest sneakers, the cool clothes, the feeling of being liked by our peers. I wish I could say that these pressures stop at childhood, but adults too often latch on to such false senses of external joy and fulfillment. In recent years, we've seen a rise in research behind that idea of finding our authentic selves, our inner happy selves, if you will. And if you're a parent and you want to instill that inner confidence, that inner happy in your child, well, then I want you to consider today's guest your fairy godmother, because she knows all too well that it takes a whole lot more than magic fairy dust to raise a well-rounded, courageous, and resilient human being. Our guest today, Maureen Healy, is an award-winning author and leader in the field of children's emotional health. Her book, Growing Happy Kids, won the Nautilus Book Award and Reader's Favorite in 2014. She also writes a very popular blog for Psychology Today and has contributed to the PBS series, This Emotional Life. With more than 15 years of global experience, Maureen continues to work with parents and children directly, running a mentoring program for highly sensitive children, which can be found by visiting highlysensitivekids.com. Also, as an avid learner and teacher, Maureen seeks to grow from every person she meets and every experience that she has, and she is often heard saying, "Life is never boring." And you're going to hear a little bit of that story as well today. So, Maureen, I am very, very pleased and honored to have you on The Meaningful Way. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Great. You know, it's funny because I think that as human beings, we will go to such incredible lengths to pursue our goals, to pursue learning, whatever it is that we're after. And that pursuit took you all the way to the Himalayas. And you got the chance to study with the His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, right there in his temple. And I want to kick things off with just talking a little bit about how did that come about, and what was that experience like?
Well, it was extraordinary, as you can imagine. But it came about because I was working with children actually in Queens, New York, counseling them in a clinic and doing it from a very Western standpoint. And these children weren't becoming happier. They were really struggling, not only with confidence, but just emotional health. And I saw a lot of my friends who were Tibetan refugees who were happy. They didn't always have two pennies to rub together, but they were happier. And I wanted to see what the other side of the world, how they went about nurturing children. And I mentioned it to my friend. I said, I'd love to go do that. And he said, well, why won't you do it? And then I got an invitation, and it all sort of synchronistically came about that I could go over and study with His Holiness, with a group of other people, as well as work in a kindergarten with the Tibetan refugee children, and actually see how they were taught. So that was really meaningful to me.
So tell me a little bit about what did you learn very specifically in terms of about happiness from that time there?
Well, I mean, it's a different culture and it's a different perspective, but I mean, at the deepest level is really, confidence precedes happiness. So that deeper type of confidence that you mentioned that my book, Growing Happy Kids, is about is how do you nurture inner confidence, that sense of within you have everything you need, no matter whether it's, to pass a spelling test the next time, or whether it's to kick the soccer ball into the net, or whether it's to get a job if you're an adult, that we have what we need. And in my book, we talk about how to nurture that. How do we do that? How can we do that in the Western world? Because there in Asia, they have a different culture that's very spiritual as well. And they do it from stories and myths and just this idea that within us, we have what we need.
So let's actually come to that, because it seems like part of the motivation in your book, Growing Happy Kids, was also from your own childhood and the way in which you were brought up, some of the lessons that you learned that worked, there's some of the things that did not work.
Right.
And so I'm just curious, because one of the things, actually, let me use this one quote that I had highlighted from your book, specifically of you chatting, that was that, I was a kid of parents with problems. For them, good parenting meant putting food on the table and a roof over our heads, something actually I think a lot of our listeners can relate to. And that's okay, but it didn't help a sensitive kid learn how to feel good about herself and her capabilities. And I guess I'm curious if from that time, what was it that as a highly sensitive kid, what is it that you were looking for? What is it that we look for from our parents at that time?
Well, I mean, I think I was born in a different generation, and that, like you said, that generation, happiness or your job was really to provide, and they did that, and they did that well. And today, as parents and professionals and teachers, we look to nurture the inner life of a child. So we don't only want to put, clothes on their back and a roof over their head and food in their tummy, but we want them to actually enjoy the experience of school. We want them to know early on that, they are capable, that they have what it takes. And we focus more on that concept of nurturing self-esteem and confidence and emotional intelligence. How do you deal with your big feelings when you have a small little body, right? These are really crucial questions that I think, previously in different generations, it was more like, we want you to do the 3 R's at school, math and reading. But now it's like, no, we want you to cooperate. We want you to be compassionate. It's just a different world.
It's interesting, and I guess I'm curious how this develops, because I think that is more in the forefront of a lot of parents' minds is, how to develop that more well-rounded, that inner happiness and confidence. I think it's more prevalent for parents today, and yet at the same time, even in the last 15, 20 years, getting caught up in that consumerism and the looking for the pay raise, the promotion, the fast car, the perfect relationship is still something that we chase. And I'm curious, what is it within us or within society that still has us chase this external happiness, even though we're becoming more mindful of a different way?
I mean, I think it's natural. We have these eyes that point outward. So it's natural to look to the outside to start with. And then we learn how to look within to create confidence and happiness. So, and we all get caught in it. It's just a part of growing up and evolving emotionally, as far as we say, okay, I'll be happy when fill in the blank, whether it's then a marriage, a house, a new job, whatever it is. For a child, it could be getting that big toy, it could be getting straight A's. Everyone falls into it. So it's learning how to not be caught and where you can turn inward, whether it's meditation, whether it's storytelling, to find that strength and confidence within. And it's a process, and it is a sign of maturity when you learn how to go within.
It's interesting because I do think that the happy when scenario is certainly something that probably is a bit of that leftover from generations past, as you were saying before, where we work for 20, 30, 40 years, and that's part of, achieve those things, and then we get to be happy. I'm curious for you, what was it? What was either the circumstance or series of moments that helped kind of snap that for you and choose this very, very different direction?
Well, I started my career counseling CEOs, as interesting as that sounds. And I did really well financially. And I said, I realized I wasn't happy. I had gotten all those little goodies on the way up that whatever corporate ladder. And I thought, oh, this isn't it, So I realized, I'm like, well, what is it? And I did live in New York City during 9/11, and I helped people look for people that were lost and were past that day. So there are these just conflux of events that I realized, like, okay, time is short here on the planet, and I have a very, very precious human life. What am I really doing? So it just helped me, and I lost people in my own family. I mean, you just start to realize the passage of time and how meaningful and how precious everything is.
Absolutely. It's an incredible mission that you are on, very specifically to be able to work and specifically help highly sensitive kids thrive. And this was something that stood out to me very much in your present book. And it stood out to me because I'm a parent. I've got 2 wonderful kids. I recognize some of the things that you talk about in terms of that highly sensitive nature in one of them. And I'm just curious because it's part of what you uncovered in the work that you did, not only your travels and professional background, but even your experience with Buddhist-based teachings, was you talk about these 5 building blocks of confidence. And I was wondering if you could go a bit into those and share just at a high level what these building blocks are. And if we take one, how do we begin to apply it as parents?
Right. Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, the building blocks are sort of the nature. For example, there's 5 building blocks of building confidence. The first one at a high level is biology. So if it doesn't mean simply, great genes, although that's helpful, and, sleeping well and eating well, but it means that, there is a biological basis for our behavior. And that includes our thinking and our thoughts. So your brain has to be you have to have the right brain chemistry. If you have a clinically depressed child, it's really hard to think a confident thought. Right. So getting the biology correct is sort of step one. Step two is really beliefs. We all know the feeling of when we believe in ourselves, like, oh, I got this. That feels great. But when you've tried hula hooping and you see a little kid say, oh, this is hard, I'm never going to be good at that. That's a whole different belief system. Mm-hmm. So learning how to be confident or learning how to be happier, it's a learned experience, a lot of it. And then the next one is emotion. So what we believe you feel. So we know, like the hula hoop scenario, oh my God, this is great, I can really do this, or oh my God, I'll never be able to get that. You just feel differently. So that sort of intensifies your beliefs. And then the fourth building block is social. So having people around you lift you up, or from a confidence perspective, having people really say, oh my God, you did wonderful. The way you studied for that spelling test, you can use that effort to study for anything or do anything. Being able to have people surrounding you that really believe in you. And also social means, saying those things to yourself. I mean, we all have had the habit of sort of tough self-talk. Like, I can't believe I did that again. And that's not, that doesn't really help your confidence. So learning how to, exercise sort of like self-talk and having people around you either building confidence or happiness that are really helpful. I mean, that's really, really, really valuable. And then the last block is spiritual. And from spiritual, I don't even mean deeply religious, although you could be. It's just from the standpoint of believing in something greater, and that something greater is in you. So that you do have that divine power and spark, so that anything on the outside isn't as strong as you are. So that's huge, especially kids. You tell a kid, I said, that you have the same star stuff, that all the energy in the stars, that's in you. They're like, are you sure? I'm like, I'm sure. So, I mean, it shifts the child perspective to think that they have what they need. So when all of those things are at play, you can, move in a confident or happier direction. So
I love where you began with that, because so often we hear this, nature versus nurture conversation, but you're saying it's both. You've got to know the nature, know the background, know the biology, and then nurture from there. I guess maybe if we go into, because if we use the building block of belief as one of the starting points here, because I think there's so many of us as parents want to be able to instill certain beliefs within our children, but we don't always know exactly how to go about that other than just telling them, right? And so what are just some maybe practical ways that really is a great way of being able to convey these beliefs, speak to children in a certain way that they can begin to take those beliefs on?
Right. It's such a good question, right? It's like $1 million question. I think that it's sort of like anyone. If someone tells you to do something, you hear it, you kind of hear it. But if someone presents as confident or happier, and you're learning how to be that way, you really sort of get it not in multiple ways. You're getting it not only through what they're saying, but you're getting it through who they are. So I think that it's an experience as a family or as a parent or as a professional or a teacher or a helping professional, that as you learn how to nurture your own confidence or your own happiness, you're sharing that experience with someone else and you're giving them tips. So I love, if we're talking about, it can be confidence or happiness, but learning those tips, whether it's, doing something to settle down and calm in the evening before you go to bed, and doing it together, whether it's a practice of gratitude and saying, all right, well, what was the best part of the day, or what was the moment that was challenging, or what am I grateful for? Really doing it together, because you can't be angry and grateful at the same time. It's just not possible. So, I love children who learn how to be grateful earlier, because it just gives them a wider perspective. I mean, I saw a movie the other night, and it was about people growing up in different places, and it was just like, how I couldn't walk out of that movie thinking, oh my gosh, I'm so blessed. You know what I mean? So, and also you want to give children a direct experience of things, whether it's, volunteering at a soup kitchen together one day. It could be one day every 3 months, it doesn't matter. But when they have that direct experience, they learn. So they learn through direct experience. If you could tell them stuff and that they'll listen, but there's nothing, as we know, like direct experience. I think there's several wonderful things in the way that you just broke that down. I think the first that's the huge reminder for so many of us, as much as it'd be nice to be able to live by
by the do as I say, not as I do. It doesn't work that way with children, right? So children are going to watch everything, they observe everything, and it really is do as I do, which means we got to work on ourselves. I think part of that is what you then just brought up in terms of what are some of those practices, those rituals, whether it's gratitude or a mindful minute or whatever it may be, that starts to pull them into it, because then it does the third thing, which is provide real firsthand experience. And that's, you think about the way that a kid plays, it's all experiential based. And so the more that we can ground in that manner, the more they're going to take it on. So I guess let me flip this a little bit then as well, because on the one side, we talk about how do we instill this. Actually, let me start here before I wanted to flip it around, but let me do this first. What are some of the uniquenesses specific to the highly sensitive children? So maybe a little bit about what do you mean by highly sensitive kids, and what's some of the uniqueness to them that may be different than what we might normally see or usually see?
Well, a highly sensitive child is someone who has big feelings and quick reactions. So it's proven through like MRI, their nervous system is slightly different. So when I say highly sensitive, it's a big umbrella. But under that umbrella, I focus primarily on emotional sensitivity, although typically they're physically sensitive as well, whether it's allergies or I hate that sock that is too tight on my foot or whatever it is. So there is just a deep feeling and usually a quick response to life. And along with emotional sensitivity, oftentimes I find that these kids are what parents would call intense. They're intense children. So that often out pictures as strong-willed or defiant, like, I will not go to school today. I am not doing my homework. So that's where there's a challenge. That's where the old type of parenting where you say, you do what I say, does not work. That's like, check off a meltdown. That's a perfect formula for a meltdown. So we have to parent in a different way, in a more mindful, more conscious, more partnership approach versus authoritarian. So that's where there's a shift. Of course, it's ideal to do this with all children and respect them and give them a voice and a choice. But with these children, it's a must, because the response and reaction that we'll get on the other side if we don't is just not worth it.
Absolutely. So what would be, if you could give us just an example of that partnership-based approach? So if we recognize some of that quick response to life within our children and some of the quicker emotional responses that are there, what would a partnership approach look like?
Well, a partnership approach isn't like letting them run the household. It would be more like, yes, you have to do your homework, but I can give you choices. Do you want to do it as soon as you get home? Do you want to do it after dinner? Or do you want to do it when you first wake up if you have time before school? Like, what is it that's going to work for you? But the idea of doing homework is non-negotiable, So you're trying to make it work for them. And, you want them to enjoy life as well. It's not all about, checking the boxes, or they have the homework, they have the socks, they have the toothpaste, they have the shower. We have to do all things, of course, but you want to respect who they are and their uniqueness and their capabilities, as well as show them that you're the leader. Some of the challenge with a lot of these emotionally sensitive children are they're intense, sensitive, strong-willed, so they're born to be leaders. So how do you lead a child who's a leader? It's very difficult. So that's where they can get stuck on things, or that they're saying, no, that doesn't work for me. So you want to honor them, but you want to work with them and say, hey, we're all part of the family. There's things that I do that maybe I don't want to wake up so early and bring you to school, but I do. So you work with them and help them, come to good choices themselves. You might motivate them with different things. Some people would call that a bribe, but it's working together.
The frame there, which I just want to make sure nobody lost, is this idea of consider this style of parenting almost like lead the leader. And when you recognize that, because that strong will is going to pay off in a lot of different regards within their life, and think about how you cultivate that leadership and how you nurture it. And I love the connection to just helping them to be able to make those good choices. I guess maybe one other thing I was curious about on this is that when you talk about that emotional response that is there, I know that for many parents, that's where we get caught up in that emotional cycle as well, or we want to help them, but we don't know how in that moment. What's a way of when one of our children is having that highly emotional response to something, what is a way for us to engage with them in that moment that, whether it be calming them down or helps them feel safer, or what can we do to help them in those moments?
It's really a great question. And of course, there's probably a million different answers since there's millions of children. But one thing that I like and I've found helpful is if you ask a child, what do you need now? Some kids, depending on their age and who their personality are, they might say, hey, I need 5 minutes in my room. Okay, done. I can give that to you. Another child is like, I need a hug. Okay, I can give that to you. I think the phrase that I think of during those moments is that, the children that are the hardest to love are the ones who need it the most. Yeah. And I think that is true. So if they're having an episode, a meltdown, a situation, it's because they're having an issue. It's not because they want to ruin the harmony of the house. It's like they are being emotionally hijacked. Mm-hmm. So what they need is support that you're unconditionally loving to them, whether they behave well or behave in ways that you don't feel comfortable with. You have to help them learn how to create a container and that they're bigger than their emotions. And that, it's lots of things. But the first step is really, I love asking them, what do you need? And 99% of the time, they'll tell you exactly what they need.
That is absolutely a great question. And I just don't want to miss this one piece that you mentioned before, which is literally when we talk about highly sensitive kids, you described it right from the standpoint of their neurosystem and the neurology that's there, because they literally sense more. And that's part of it, is the information's coming at them in a different way, which is what creates some of that reaction. Anyway, I want to come back to, I'd said I wanted to reverse things just a little bit, which is that if we go now to the kids that seem to already have that confidence, they already exude some of those qualities, whether it be, the self-reliance, the perseverance, some of the trust in themselves. And then for some reason, they encounter the challenge. They encounter something that now pushes them to the point of getting lost within some of the self-doubt. What do we do then? How do we help them kind of return and tap back into more of the natural confidence that they've already got?
Well, give me an example, because I always see children as growing their confidence. When I see kids who are really confident, usually they have outer confidence. They're confident in kicking the soccer ball in, or they're confident in, they know they can make friends, or they're confident in taking a test. So it's rare for me to see kids that have that inner confidence that, whatever happens, I got this. Mm-hmm. So it's always a process of nurturing their confidence. But give me an example, and I'll. Well,
actually, I think that actually gets to the nature of what I was asking. Is exactly that more often than not, many of the children that appear confident have that external confidence, or they have that confidence in one area, but it's not that deeper confidence that is actually there, or they probably wouldn't have gotten shaken. And so I think actually that's a great response to it. And maybe that's what leads me to the question of, help us understand that definition for you of inner confidence.
That's a really good question. I guess the thing that I would say is that confidence exists along a continuum. So it's not like you either have outer confidence or inner confidence. We all have moments of outer confidence where you walk out of the beauty salon with your hair done and you're like, I look fabulous, or that's why people dress up, because it helps you feel good, and that's appropriate. That's great. But that inner confidence is something you cultivate and that you learn and you keep deepening over your lifetime, that is rooted in something different that says, hey, I got what I need. No matter what happens in the outer world, I can make it. Like a cat, I can land on my feet. You know what I mean? So tell me the question again.
Well, it was defining that inner confidence, which you just described. It is that kind of that inner quality within us that lets us know that no matter how our situations unfold, we're going to land on our feet. We know that we've got this, and that it's something that it exists within that spectrum. It's something we nurture and we cultivate over time. And I guess maybe in this, because this was something I heard at the top of the interview, of how inner confidence, almost in the way you described it, I believe, almost sounds like it precedes happiness in some manner. Can you talk a little bit about the way that inner confidence and happiness relate to one another?
Right. Absolutely. The only one thing I wanted to add from the last question is that if you have a community of people around you with similar beliefs that have a deeper sense of belief in their capability to thrive and succeed in this world, no matter what, it's helpful. So that's just a separate piece. But the idea of confidence being connected to happiness is the idea of a deeper sense of confidence, inner confidence. When you have a deeper sense of confidence, you can have a deeper sense of happiness. So the idea of there's different types of happiness. We can have fleeting happiness, which is, I have an ice cream cone with chocolate sprinkles and I love it. Don't get me wrong. It's fabulous and wonderful. There's nothing wrong with that. But if I drop it on the floor or when it's over, that happiness is sort of evaporated, right? It's sort of come and gone, which is normal and healthy. But if you can have a deeper sense of happiness, which is what I would call contentment or inner peace, that ability to be still within yourselves and to have a worldview that works for you and is sort of optimistic and based on skillful thinking, it's really that sort of inner peace. You can only have that if you have that deeper sense of confidence, inner confidence, or you have that growing because you're not shaken by the outer events. You know what I mean? The nature of life is there's challenges and obstacles, and that's okay too. It's sort of like you don't get a diamond by just, it's got to have some pressure. So, it's how do we use the dirt or mud in our lives to grow a beautiful flower? It's how do we take any sort of challenges and with our children, especially help them learn how to use the energy of challenges and steer toward their best lives. So the connection from inner confidence to happiness is that there's a deeper sense of confidence internal that can grow a deeper sense of happiness that's internal.
Well, and I love the way that you connect everything also through peace, as well as some of what you said before about the social connections and connections we have, because I think that all of these components, these qualities, these states work well together in that they, the more the happiness grows, the more your peace grows. The more that inner peace grows, the more your confidence grows. The more the confidence grows, the more the peace grows. So they all are kind of feeding and fueling each other in this regard because it is this inner state of peace and joy that ultimately we're after. And all those things contribute to it.
And I would say that yes, of course, we're after it, but it's like it's our natural state that's there, and we just have to take off all the sort of socialization and different things we've learned that have sort of obscured it.
That's a great way of saying it. Excellent way of saying it. And so, the reason why I wanted to have you on the show, because I believe that parenting and obviously the relationship we have with our children is one of those elements that is so crucial to many of us on our meaningful way. And so you've talked and given us great advice and guidance today. And I guess I'd like to go back to your wisdom one more time on this. The show is The Meaningful Way. And so I'd love to know that for you, what is it that makes life and your work meaningful?
That's such a great question. What is it that makes life and work meaningful? Well, I'll answer with the work piece. I mean, certainly, like you started at the beginning of the interview, is like, I wasn't always a happy child. So that was a deeply big desire or wish in my life is how do I become happier? How do I do that? Like what's involved? So learning the spiritual, the psychological, the different ways to create happier experiences, since we can create that, has been sort of a quest and something that I'm always deepening, but being able to help children do it so they don't have to go through the same bumps that maybe I've been through or other people have been through, because they're so smart and they're so capable. So I know that children can be happier sooner rather than later, and giving them the tools and techniques and thought forms and practices to do that gives me great joy. That makes me feel like, wow, coming back to planet Earth was a good idea.
Maureen, I appreciate that. And I think, again, it just enlightens everybody that no matter what it is that we've been through, whatever our experiences are in life, is to be able to look back at that story and see what we can draw from it. What is the meaning that we can put to use, and how does that play out in our life now? And, what do we want to do with it? And Maureen, I thank you so much for sharing that wisdom with us, as well as the meaningful work that you're doing in the world. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. For everybody, I want to encourage you to check out Maureen Healy's book, Growing Happy Kids. One, it's a great book. And number two, if we grow happy kids, that means one day we'll even have some happy adults. And that would make for a wonderful world. And so I guess maybe the one thing, two things that I would like to leave you with out of this interview, because there was a lot of great things. Number one, I love the question of what do you need now? And that's something that applies not only with working with our children and what they may be going through in a given moment, but honestly, that works for us as well. The last thing is just that reminder of help the next one in line. Meaning the next one that's coming up, no matter what your successes are, whatever you've achieved, whatever meaning you're pursuing, how is it that you can pay that to the next person in line? Pay it forward in that sense. And so everyone, I want to thank you for joining us in for another Meaningful Way episode. And until next time, continue to enjoy the journey. I want to thank you for tuning in to today's episode. Our guest is actually a speaker at the upcoming World Happiness Summit on March 17th to 19th, happening in Miami, Florida. This is going to be truly an unbelievable event that has brought together a host of thought leaders and experts from around the world on the topic of happiness, well-being, and how it is that we're going to flourish in our lives, in our world, and in our organizations. You're also going to walk away with many practical tools, exercises, and practices to help you expand happiness within your life, as well as start to get connected to a larger tribe and a bigger movement that is making happiness a reality and even a human right around the world. If you want to learn more, head over to happinesssummit.world. That's happinesssummit.world to learn about the World Happiness Summit happening March 17th to 19th in Miami, Florida. I hope to see you there.